Hello folks, and welcome back to my channel. I am here today with quite possibly the most requested subject that I talk about of all time and the most difficult for me to talk about: heavy modifications. Now to start, what are heavy mods? So heavy modifications or heavy mods is a term given to a subsect of modifications that fall under the umbrella of the body modification industry. These oftentimes get lumped in with tattooing and piercing, even though they are a completely different skill and service. Some things that fall under the umbrella of heavy mods are tongue splits, subdermal implants, magnetic implants, coin slots, punch and sutures when it comes to large gauge conches, large gauge flats, things like that. And then you have the gray area of scarification, which in some areas is classed as a heavy modification and in some areas is classed as its own procedure. But the primary fact that sets heavy modification work aside from other body modification work that we do in the industry is that heavy modification work is also illegal plastic surgery. Now, what do I mean when I say it's illegal plastic surgery? I mean exactly that. So when we take, say, tongue splits, for example, which have become hugely popular on TikTok, without a lot of the warnings about the reality of these procedures. With a tongue split, when you're opting to get this procedure done, you're going to see someone who is not a licensed medical professional, who doesn't have any medical training, who is trained by someone. Ask them who they're trained by. A lot of folks just kind of try to figure this out on their own. But this is a person with no medical training who is not operating out of a surgical suite or an OR. This is someone who's operating out of a tattoo and piercing studio or a hotel room or sometimes a convention floor. Oftentimes there are illegal numbing agents involved because, as you might imagine, getting this work done without anything to numb you would be incredibly excruciatingly painful. But this is not a licensed medical practitioner. This is not someone who has a license to legally obtain numbing agents and to legally administer numbing agents. So there are either no numbing agents being used or they're being used illegally. Your vital signs are not monitored during any of these procedures. Some implant work can take 2 hours, and there is no one who is checking your blood pressure or your heart rate or anything like that during this procedure. They do whatever procedure you came to get done, stitch you up, and send you out the door. You are not being prescribed antibiotics for this to help prevent infection because you are not seeing a licensed doctor who can prescribe medicine. You're also not being prescribed pain management for the healing duration of this modification because, again, you are not seeing someone who is a licensed medical professional to perform this. It is, at its essence, illegal plastic surgery. And this is part of why it has taken me so long to say anything about heavy modifications on any of my platforms. There have been a number of court cases recently happening around the world that deal with heavy modification and heavy modification artists. And in those court cases, Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, Instagram, social media websites, and open online discussion of heavy modification work has been used in these court cases against these heavy modification artists. Which means anyone who is talking very openly about heavy modification online is putting both themselves and their artist at risk of a legal crackdown. I've also, for the past many years, been living in states where heavy modification work is black and white illegal. Now, in a lot of areas, heavy modification work falls into a gray area. It is not in the law illegal to do these procedures, but it's also not legal. So if someone really wanted to, they could crack down on it in a court of law. But there are some states where, black and white in the law, these procedures are illegal. They are considered felony practicing medicine without a license. And for the last many years, I have been living in 2 separate states, Florida and Tennessee, where these procedures are hardline illegal on the books, which, as a professional piercer, really limited my ability to talk about these online without putting myself or others at risk. I currently live in Pennsylvania, where these things are not illegal on the books, but it is kind of a gray area, which is why I can talk about them a little bit more openly. Now, a lot of times when people hear my viewpoint on heavy modification work, the response is always, "But Lynn, don't you have heavy modification work?" And my answer is yes, I do. I have scarification, I have implants, I have my tongue split. I have gotten heavy modification work done. But I also started in this industry at a time when heavy mod work was treated very differently than it is in the current day. When I started, heavy modification work was much more underground, and people were very open about the fact that this was illegal plastic surgery. No one was beating around the bush and pretending that this was just like another piercing or a tattoo. There were forums online where you could go and see people who had had infections, see people who had had problems, and it was very well understood that this was experimental illegal plastic surgery, that you were going to see someone with no medical degree and no medical training to get this work done, and that you were willing to incur all of the risk that came along with doing that. And for me, I was willing to take that risk, and I knew that it could have a very serious risk and consequence for me. However, as times have gone on and things have changed, especially with the advent of TikTok, we see a lot of people talking about heavy modifications without talking about this element of them. The amount of people I run into who are surprised to find out that heavy mod artists don't have any professional medical training or aren't legally licensed practitioners for this is shocking and also really scary. Because while the industry has progressed and grown a lot, it is still illegal plastic surgery. And when I say there are serious risks to this, there are people who get infections that end up in the hospital. When we talk about implants, I have seen implants reject in ways that have permanently disfigured people or permanently disabled people and damaged their movement and usage of certain body parts. And when I say there were all those court cases that were being brought up, that happened because a woman in Australia died from receiving an improperly done subdermal implant from a well-regarded heavy modification artist in the area. The risks in opting to get heavy mod work done are no different than the risks in opting to get plastic surgery out of a hotel room. And I see people in the industry who love to make fun of the girls who go and get Fix-A-Flat injected into them in Miami and LA, but we are literally no better. We are letting strangers cut apart our ears and our tongues in hotel rooms and sometimes even on convention floors. Now, I'm a big believer in informed consent. I believe that if you have the information and you understand everything and you're cool with it and the person who's doing is cool with it and you want to do it, that's on you. I have talked many different times on my pages about informed consent, and heavy mods are a great example of that. But you can't make an informed decision without the information. And in recent times, the discussion about the reality of what heavy modifications are and the risks that people incur in choosing to get them have not really been happening in spaces where heavy mods are talked about. That's why I wanted to sit down and make this video explaining these risks and hopefully getting through to people the reality of what heavy modification work is. And I say everything I'm saying in this video, again, as someone who has this work. Now, I think another hard thing when it comes to the shape of the heavy modification industry at present is the lack of information, and this is not just surrounding informed consent, but it's also surrounding artists. Back in the day when I got started, there were forums and resources that you could find to figure out who was a safe artist and who wasn't. Word of mouth was a lot more prevalent back then as well, and it was pretty easy to figure out who the safe practitioners were and who they weren't. However, with the loss of some of those websites and forums that we used to be on, and with the rise of new forms of social media, that level of communication and level of being able to find and get references for this work is almost gone. And this leaves people who are seeking heavy modification work in a difficult position, because while there are a few big names that you can very easily find online, I would say over half of them are practitioners that I do not consider safe and I would never trust to work on my body for these procedures. They are practitioners who are facing sexual assault charges in multiple states. These are practitioners who have a long history of botched heavy modification work, who unfortunately you have to do a lot of digging, but if you do enough, you'll find stories of people with disfiguring coin slots in their ears, tissue that went necrotic and needed multiple expensive plastic surgeries to save, rejecting subdermal implants that have disfigured parts of people's bodies, incorrectly done tongue splits that have led to permanent speech impediments and issues talking, and incorrect earlobe reconstruction or enlargement that has cost someone basically the entire lower portion of their ear. We are talking serious consequences, and these are from some of the names that you will see mentioned the most often online. Beyond that, a lot of these artists understand that what they are doing is illegal and also understand that they're not very good at it, and so they rely on threatening people. In the past, when I have tried to speak out about a heavy modification artist who I knew was unsafe, whose bad work I had fixed, I was threatened with multiple lawsuits. The point that it is not safe for me to publicly name this person in this video, even though I have seen dozens of documented cases of unsafe and incorrect mod work come from this practitioner. Really do a ton of research before you commit to your artist. Now, the other thing I want to touch on in this video is when I talk about this, a lot of people go, well, why don't doctors do this, or why can't people get medical training? And unfortunately, that's like the whole crux of the issue, isn't it? Because if this could be done safely in a medical setting, I think a lot of us would be happy to get it done safely in a medical setting. Me personally, I would have given anything to have an actual doctor doing my tongue split, if only so that I could get prescription pain management for the healing process, because that healing process is absolutely brutal without any form of pain management. But unfortunately, due to biases against heavy modification work and like different forms of self-expression and bodily expression, most plastic surgeons and medical surgeons would lose their license if they did a lot of the work that people want to get done for heavy mods. So it leaves us in this weird catch-22 where heavy mod artists are doing this, but they're not properly trained, they're not medical doctors. So it leaves us in this weird catch-22 where we have heavy mod artists who are doing it, who some of them are being as safe as they possibly can be, and others are literally horribly unsafe and butchering people. But this group is the only group that people who want this work can go to, because the doctors won't do it. They say it's mutilation. They say, oh, you can't actually want horns in your forehead, or scars on your body, or magnets in your hand. This is weird. We're not going to do it. In fact, we're probably going to revoke doctors' licenses if they try and do it. So what do you do if you want the work done? The doctors won't do it for you. The heavy mod artists will, but it's illegal plastic surgery. Well, if they're the only people who'll do it for you, that's who you end up turning to. And that's where being so careful in researching who you see and who you would allow to do this for you, and also keeping this work underground, comes into play. If you want to get this work done, if you found an artist you trust and you feel comfortable with, great. But maybe don't put all of the details all over the internet all the time, because I promise you, having spoken to health inspectors and health departments who are currently actively pursuing heavy modification cases in America, they are looking at that stuff. They are looking at your TikTok videos, they are looking at your Instagram posts, and I don't want us to see prosecution of heavy mod artists here in America, but unfortunately, I would not be surprised with some of the dangerous and unsafe work happening right now if we had another B-slice. So that is my overview on heavy modification work. That is also an explanation of why I haven't talked about this in depth on any of my platforms before, and I really hope this video reaches those who are interested in this work and helps them understand the risks and make informed decisions. But I also hope that this video helps educate people in how to keep the heavy mod industry as underground and as safe as possible. At the end of the day, it all comes down to informed consent, but you cannot make an informed decision without the information. So please, if you're interested in any work like this, really do your research. As per usual, if you like this video and you like the content I put out, please hit like and subscribe. If you'd like to see me do any deep dives on further heavy modification topics, or look at cases where dangerous heavy modification work has been done, let me know. And I look forward to sitting down and chatting with everyone again soon. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.